be taking a look at a scenario where civilization started over, episode 3. So I'm very excited for the video. So yeah, this time there were no issues. These are the exact same borders. So in the last episode, we saw several new civilizations popping up in Southeast Asia here. And we also saw Sri Lanka forming. We saw the expansion of some countries / civilizations. So yeah, that was a very fun video to make, and I'm as excited for this episode. So yeah, let's just jump straight into the video. So the first event which will be happening is actually going to be some classic North Indian expansionist vibes here. The North Indians, they're going to be going even further here. So yeah, they're gonna conquer a lot of land here, and they're gonna now do something interesting here. That's the kind of start taking up their border along the East Indian country. So this is kind of gonna intimidate. This is gonna intimidate the East Indian king a lot. So he is gonna go over to the yellow country / the West Indian country, and he's gonna be like, "Hey, why are they trying to make the border longer? Don't they hate us?" Well, they continue to make this border longer, and they start filling this land up. And well, Bengal, they also join in on the land grab, and well, so do the East Indian story. Well, eventually we see the land grab looking something like that. So yeah, that's the first kind of filling up. Now they share the biggest border, I think, in the whole world. It makes them very nervous. And they call out the yellow country. The yellow country is like, okay, to the planets to make their border bigger. So they start going up. And could these guys be going to war? We'll see later in the episode. But first we have to see these guys expand. Because, well, they just like expanding. And this time they're going to go across the Pakistani coast here. And, well, they're now like in the Balochistan region, I believe, like something. They go around the coast here and they start wrapping around it, and I believe they're now in the Balochistani region, but they continue going like very far until they even start reaching Iran, but by now they want to take in their border. So well, they now start to take in themselves along the coastal region here, because they just don't want to be. They want to, kind of, as I said, most of the population lived very close to the coast, but not on the coast. So they need to ticken themselves up a bit. And well, after a bit of ticketing up, they have a pretty good foothold over this coast. So yeah, what we actually see happening here is that we see some North Indian explorers going up north. And what they find is a ton of mountains. They find it pretty useless, honestly, but they're like, freak it, let's just start our own civilization. So just like that, we see this like mountainy Afghan civilization coming, and well, they are gonna overall set themselves up across this region, across these mountainy regions. Well, they're gonna be pretty small because mountains, it's not really a good place to be, but they're gonna kind of try to survive. They're gonna push down south towards the red border, and well, that's how new cursed looking Afghanistan civilization looks like. And Afghanistan is more south. It's just like Xinjiang almost area, very southern Xinjiang almost. So well, for our next event we have to go to the east, because we are going to see these guys sailing down south. Well, what they do is that they sail so much down south that they discover like the Vietnamese coast around here, and well, they even start searching to Cambodia. And these guys are very strong, and they also now send some boats eastwards, and they now discover southern Taiwan here. They discover southern Taiwan, and they now set up a small colony. They also set up some colonial gains here, and well, they now have Taiwan a bit under their control. Even worse, they go down south towards the Philippines and set up a little colony along Luzon here in the northern part of the Philippines. So yeah, cool. These guys are really building up their empire around the South China Sea. So yeah, that kind of might be a big empire later on. But now we have to move to Borneo, who is also going to continue to kind of expand around the Filipino islands. They captured this Long Island completely here. It's not Long Island, obviously, like, you know, New York, Long Island, just a Long Island. Yeah, right. They actually sent some ships, and they actually do reach some Filipino islands here, and they even are on Luzon now, so that's interesting. Bornean expansion. They also go around the coast and continue their expansionist phase around the area. For our next thing, we have to move on to the Singaporeans. What? We have to move on to the Singaporeans. The Singaporeans are the GOAT. They're the GOAT, if you didn't know. They're the first democracy, so they're just the GOAT. So they kind of now start going around this coast, and they now start conquering some islands. They set the sail up north, and they even now conquer these islands, which is a very interesting development for the Singaporeans. Even more interesting, they continue sailing down south, and they now set up a colony over here in Java, which is quick to become one of their most populated colonies here. They just very quickly start colonizing a lot of Java, and they even now conquer this island. So yeah, Singaporean expansion is huge. But we can actually see a new civilization. So a mix of Bornean and Singaporean explorers / people are gonna migrate to the south of Borneo here. Singaporeans from the north and from the south, and the Borneans from the north. Okay, why? You know. And Singaporeans from the north, so yeah. What we see happening is that a new civilization is formed over here in Borneo, in South Borneo rather. And well, these guys are already gonna have a very big population, since a lot of people move there happily. Because this is like a plan to kind of make their own civilization, and it's just kind of fun as people who didn't like, because the monarchists, because both of these countries are democracies, the monarchists, they moved here, and they're forming a South Bornean, the Kingdom of South Borneo here. They interestingly set a sail, and they now start colonizing even more islands over here. They start colonizing a lot of islands actually. And they even now reach Java and start colonizing the southern areas of Java here. So yeah, this is one of the most fun places in the world to draw, because there's so many islands. You can do the most ridiculous things here. But yeah, for our next event, we are actually gonna see a treaty which is gonna divide this land, which is interesting. So well, we're gonna see this land going over to the yellow civilization. This land will go over to the East Indian country. Okay, what? And the rest of the land, interestingly enough, is going over to Sri Lanka. Why am I doing this? Let's just do like that. So that's the division of South India, you can say. And well, we're gonna see Sri Lanka doing something very interesting. They're gonna set up a sail on a huge voyage across the Indian Ocean. It's like a very big voyage, and well, it's one of the first small country to be a very long one. They have a very small population, so this will be very hard. But after several attempts, they actually reach Java, and they set up a small but certainly significant colony here. So yeah, this is very interesting to see the colonization of this land. But remember those border things happening? Yeah, that's interesting. Oh, but for our next event, it's going to be a very big event, because we are going to see... Oh, why is this the river? Because we're going to see the first capital city being officially formed. And now I am actually gonna make a new. Hey, does anyone think that this blue is cooler for the capitals? Like, yeah, maybe. Tick. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. Like, we're gonna run with the blue. So, well, we're gonna see the first capital city being built, and this will be the capital of the red civilization, which is gonna be putting it right on this river here. So yeah, that's the first capital. Soon after is the East Indian country. They're gonna put their capital right here in their like birthplace. So yeah, the first and the next country to quickly do that is gonna be, interestingly enough, Bengal, who puts their capital. Why is that black? Who puts their capital right here. So yeah, we see the first capital cities forming, and this is a big thing for civilization, obviously, because these guys are now cemented countries with actual capitals. Like before, it's just like random civilizations. No, not anymore. These guys are actual countries. But for our next event, it's gonna be a very big event because it's gonna be the first war, quote unquote war, you can say, because we're gonna see the Red Army. Yeah, they have now finally assembled the army, and well, they're gonna send their army right into the blue East Indian country. They send their army, and it was a surprise. Both of them were gearing up for war, but they did a surprise attack just before when they were building their capital. And this caused, because everyone was just focused on the capital, so this caused them to lose time. So well, the capital is built, but by now we see all of this land being captured, and well, this is not at all good for the East Indians, because they're being slapped by the North Indians. So yeah, they're very unhappy. But what they do is that they quickly send the army to liberate this coast, to liberate the coastal region from these North Indians, and they start to kick the North Indians back, and they reach a front line like this. They ask the West Indians to join the war in promise of like all of this land. Like they promise all of this land, and that's a lot of land. And they were anyway else, so they decided together they will probably win the war. So the Yellow Indians, the West Indians, they joined the war, and well, they now start to conquer some of these coastal lands. They were preparing for war anyway. Well, the Red North Indians, they did not expect these guys to join the war, so that was unexpected. So that'll kind of cut them off guard, but they're gonna continue their offensive into the region, into the East Indian country. This northeast to the west, and this is South India, so that's kind of interesting. And well, they continue their war score like gains. They gain a lot of land over here. This is very much catching the East Indians off guard, but we see the West Indians continuing to do very well on their front. See, they were not really focused on the coast, the North Indians, so they push all the way to the West Indians, they push all the way to the Indus River, and they go up the river. And this is gonna be a huge message to the North Indians, showing the fact that they're not invincible, because they're losing to a weaker country. But they quickly gather up their army, and they now push through the river, cutting the West Indians off, and they now encircle and kill all of the troops. They also now push, capturing and destroying, killing all these people here. So well, and probably these are all civilians who are fighting, probably. So well, this war is a bloody war. But since the North Indians are so distracted, we actually see the East Indians pushing back into North India, and they even now start to, well, they start a campaign into North India and they capture some territory. So this war is gonna be an intense war. And to make things even worse for the North Indians, we see an interesting country rebelling here. And well, we see these coastal lands here deciding that they are done with this North Indian regime. It's a very tyrannical regime. And well, they just rebel. We see a lot of regions overall rebelling here. And well, we see a big rebellion popping out over here. And well, the Balochistan rebellion, I'm gonna call it, they quickly start gaining a lot of land. And well, they now just start kicking North India's ass around this region. They didn't really have a lot of control to start with in this region, so they're going to be caught off guard because they did not see this rebellion coming. They thought the population was too low in this region. Turned out that they were wrong. It is not too low for any rebellions. So well, we're going to see several rebellious groups popping up, and well, they gain a lot of support with the people, so they're able to gain all of this land. But to be fair to North India, they're able to liberate quite a lot of their land away from the West Indians here. They push the West Indians all the way out of this land, all the way out of their own territory, and they now start a campaign into West India's land. So yeah, that's not really good, is it? And well, after a lot of bloodshed, we eventually see the blues. Guys, we're gonna see the East Indian and West Indian kings meeting up in Sri Lanka, actually, and they are going to decide that we want to peace out with the North Indians, but we just have to do one attack, liberating all our territories, and then we're going to peace out. We still win because this Balochistan rebellion is going to weaken the North Indians, so it's cool, I guess, and they agree. So well, we see them retreating all their troops, and they now just focus completely on pushing the North Indians out of their territory. Eventually, they're successful. No, not so successful. Eventually, they reach quite a lot of success as they're able to mostly kick the North Indians out of their territory. And well, with the West Indians, it's less easy, but they do still somewhat do it, I would say. And well, now with this, we see all of the teams meeting up in the capital of North India to discuss surrender, and well, they decide to stop fighting each other and finally peace out. And we can see how it'll look like in a second here. Well, yeah, so wait. Okay, so for the piecing out stuff, we see North India just gaining a tiny bit of land from the West Indians, and they also just gain some very small territories over here from the East Indians. These are the West Indians. They also gain a bit more land from the East Indians. What am I even saying? From the West Indians, rather. And well, yeah, so that's how it looks like. But so you were saying that North Indians won the war. That's not completely true, because remember there was that rebellion, and well, they gained a lot of land. They reached all the way to the Indus River, and they claim all of this territory. Well, they do now start a slight expansion, and well, yeah, they even reached the Arabian area. They also conquered these islands. And well, that's where I'm gonna actually end this episode. It was a very fun episode, especially the first major war, you could say. And well, yeah, I think that's where we're gonna end the episode off. Bye guys, hope you liked it.